let me say two things to introduce this. All right. One, what's Abyss Iceland? All right. So Abyss Iceland is essentially what CCP EHF became after Abyss bought them. So they are still required to file these financial statements in Iceland because they're a company that is based in Iceland, but now they're consolidated up into into the Abyss group overall. But this subsidiary of Abyss that incorporates everything that used to be CCP or CCP Games is now Abyss Iceland. This does include subsidiaries outside of Iceland, like the studio in London or the studio in Shanghai. All right. Once a year they file this. This is for calendar year 22. And so this is this covers everything from January 2022 to December 2022. It just takes them 3 to 4 months to get the financial statements ready, get them audited and everything by PwC, and then they come out. Daniel Plain, congratulations on winning that raffle. I'm going to restart it here. Daniel, you know the drill. Here's a Discord link. Send me a message either on Discord or on Twitch, and I'll send you a link, a skin code. All right. So this is why we're looking at these statements now. They just came out this week. The second thing I want to mention is, why is Croda here? All right. So Croda has a blog. If you guys watch my stream every once in a while, then you probably come across him. Croda has a blog called Markets for ISK, and he shares my passion in analyzing these financials when they come out. So he's already had a blog posts, and you can find that at, I'll do some advertising for you, Croda. Here you go. That's the link to his blog. And there you can see this week he already posted an analysis of these financial statements here. And since he does the analysis and I do the analysis, I figured it would make a lot of sense if we bundle our knowledge and what we have noticed in here and kind of go through this together and discuss for you guys' benefits, so you guys can, maybe we can shed some light on what's going on here. Because if you're not used to looking at financial statements, then this probably doesn't mean anything. So we'll try to do that over the next, half an hour, 45 minutes, however long it takes. Croda, if you've got to run, whenever you can, of course. Now there's a text intro here that I'm not gonna cover because we're gonna talk about some of these things. We'll go back to the text to cover some things that we see in the numbers, but I'm gonna jump straight into the numbers, and that's the statement of comprehensive income. And let me actually make this a little bigger, so this you should be able to see. All right. So well, actually, this should be better, right? There we go. The statement of comprehensive income is the income statement. So this covers everything that they take in revenue and that goes out in expenses, and this covers the result of that, which is the income or the profit and profitability of the company. So immediately, I wonder if I can. Let me actually. You know what I do? I need to take this probably off of. Fuck it. You guys will survive. Immediately, what you see here is the game revenue right here, right? And so the game revenue on top there, you can see in 2021 was $63 million, and in 2022 was $56 million. So immediately we see that the revenue dropped. In your post, I think you said 12% quotas by 12%, and that's obviously quite significant, right? A 12% drop in revenue is not great. I can't say that this comes entirely as a surprise. Last year we saw an increase in the sub price in May, and then we saw various sales, and that's a very risky sales strategy. So naturally, the way that CCP makes money is through Omega purchases and Plex purchases, and overall that has gone down by 12%. It's nothing less or nothing more than that, right? Crota, what's your thoughts? Is not very surprising to me.
No. I mean, there's two parts to that 56 million. There's the actual EVE Online, EVE Echoes, which also fell 12%. That's 47 million, and then obviously they have the Chinese revenue, which was 8 million. Bear in mind, obviously in May they put up the subscription price by 30-odd%. So you've got to assume player numbers was what really dragged it down. And obviously in 2020 the revenues were flat. So you've gone from flat in 2021 to down 12% this year. And it fell in every region of the world as well. So North America, Europe, Asia, everywhere sort of saw a decline.
Yeah. And so what you're referring to there, just to explain that, here, I think I got it in dark mode now. Does this work? Look at this. Oh, this could be good. No, it doesn't work. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Nice try. The China revenue is because in China they actually run a completely different server, and all revenue there goes through it's NetEase, right? NetEase that they collaborate.
That's right.
with.
NetEase,
Yeah.
And they had to relaunch it in September as well. The sort of the laws in China changed, and we don't really know the effect of that just yet.
Yeah. But if you look, and you can see that later. If you look at revenue by region, you can see that a lot of this is across the board, right? There's not like really one region where they completely fell off. It's a decline across the board in terms of geography.
Yeah, pretty much.
So just based on that, we see that the gross profit drops from 59 million to 51 million. That's that's what happens if you have less revenue. That's not surprising either. If we're looking at the operating expenses below, we can see that R&D expenses are pretty much flat, and that is for them R&D is it's a lot of development cost for new games, right? I mean that's what it is, and probably also existing games. I don't think we have there's no labor cost here, so all labor cost is basically baked into these categories up there. So R&D covers the game development, publishing. Is then everything that happens after the game is done and you're trying to bring it to market. Marketing obviously is mostly advertising, which dropped from 14 million to 12 million, but that's you got to think in a lot of times they're going to do as much marketing as they think makes sense or they think they need to do. So that's that's not huge news. General and administrative expenses are pretty much flat, so that's just their admin costs. If you look at their HR, finance, all the back office, you could say, or corporate services that they have internally, and then there's the big one, right? And then there's something called an impairment loss of $51 million, and that's what brings the total operating expenses from last year 73 million to 123 million. Now, this impairment loss, in simple words, it's a loss that they're taking because they are downgrading the value of the asset that that is or was CCP when they bought it. So when they bought CCP, they paid a certain price for it, and now they think CCP is so Pearl Abyss, when they purchased it, they paid a certain price for it, and now they clearly they are obligated to review the value of all assets on a regular basis, and clearly now, due to various reasons such as rising interest rates and also reduced expectations of future revenues from CCP, so reduced expectation of growth from EVE Online and other games, they are basically writing off $50 million, which is obviously a huge chunk. So you're taking a year that was not great. That was a loss from 8 million last year that they, I'm sure, hope to turn around this year. You're taking that and you're adding a $50 million charge because you're writing off some of that value of the asset. So that's a huge one. Looking back, I mean, this is probably not as surprising. I mean, if you're looking at the price that they paid and the expectations they had, then clearly CCP did not deliver on everything that they hoped for. You can also see that based on some payments that were supposed to happen, but that never happened because CCP did not hit certain performance targets. But this 50 million is obviously huge, right, Corda?
Yeah, and it wasn't mentioned in the Pearl Abyss full year numbers.
It will be. It will be now, huh? Next week or something?
Well, I wonder, because the accounts we're seeing here is for the year end December. And the reason we're just talking about them in May is they don't have to file them anytime soon. Whereas obviously Pearl Abyss is a quoted business, they have to file them pretty quickly. They did talk about a 79 billion won write-off, which is about $60 million. I think this is it. Because I can't see how they can avoid 50 million in their account. So I think this is it. I mean, it's for the reasons you've said. I mean, obviously last year when they rocked up to South Korea in May, and the Koreans said, look, you've got to increase your prices by 30%, because if you make a loss, we're going to have to take a hit because you cannot meet the numbers we bought you on, and they can't. And then the other reason, as you said, is interest rates have gone up and the value of future money today gets lower in a rising rate environment. But the bigger issue, I think, is just the future earnings are not going to be delivered upon. I mean, the way they do it mechanically is they take 5 years of future earnings and then they grow the 5th year by 2% into perpetuity. Now, we've obviously been through a year where I guess they expected to make 10 million profit and they've made 19 million loss. So that's game over. And their rate expectation, or the rate they used to discount, only went up 1.5% from 11.5% to 13%. So that won't be a big issue. So it's a big one, and I don't think I doubt the Korean management are happy. The other side of it, though, the rest of the costs. I mean, you've got to say congratulations to CCP, because if you strip out that 51 million impairment, the rest of the costs went from 74 to 72.5 million in a year that was highly inflationary. So somehow, most people's costs would be going up 20% last year, and they held it to flat. So, firstly, well done them. But what it means, if they want to eliminate this loss, is they can't cut costs, because presumably there are just no more costs to be cut. They have to somehow increase their revenues by 30%.
Yeah, and the silver lining here is that this 51 million is obviously not a cash out expense. So it's not like their cash flow was hit with 50 million. This is purely a balance sheet transaction, right? So it's a financial loss, but it's not a cash out. So it's not like they are strapped for cash right now, as we will see in the statement of cash flows in a second here.
That's exactly correct. I mean, what it's saying is that at some time in the future, over a number of years, they're not going to get a 50 million that they expected. And what they're also saying is, well, Pearl Abyss is saying is, we spent 50 million too much acquiring this. But as you say, it's not an issue to the cash flow right now.
Yeah. Vidley in chat is asking, does that mean Pearl Abyss is preparing to sell CCP Games? I think it's this doesn't mean one way or the other. This just what this in fact just means is that it just proves that CCP did not get out of the purchase what they hoped, because this 50 million write down is it's terrible, no in terms of an investment decision, no matter how you look at it. So that's we know that, but we don't. They've been knowing this for a while, so this to them, out of all people, to Pearl Abyss, this is not a surprise at all. So they will have planned for this for a year, and so if they were to sell CCP now, they would be selling it at a certainly at a loss compared to the price that they paid. But presumably they're also they're pretty deeply invested here, and CCP is developing new IP. And so the question is, does Pearl Abyss believe in the IP, in the new IP that CCP is developing? And if they do, then they're going to hang on to it. If they don't, then they're going to then they're already looking for a seller. Styler Star, congrats for the on winning the raffle. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Corda.
It's interesting. They've also just recently set up a new company in Iceland. I think it's called Pearl Abyss Iceland Investment. Now, I don't know what it is. There's no accounts just yet, but that could be related to the A to Z 40 million investment, which happened after the year end, so you won't see it in here. The fact they made the write down, they have to, by accounting rules, make the write down, whether or not CCP is about to be sold anyway. So, and if they make a loss this year and they didn't expect to, they'll have to do another write down as well.
Yeah, for sure. So if we go down here, the loss for the period last year is an 8 million loss, and this year is a 70 million loss, but essentially that is only due to the 51 million. It's partially because you have 12% lower revenues, but it's mainly because you have the 51 million impairment loss. So if you look at their balance sheet, this explains it quite well. There's something on here called Goodwill, and Goodwill is basically the balance sheet lists all the assets that a company has. So what does a company own? What does a company hold of value, right? And when a company gets bought, like CCP Games was by Pearl Abyss, then you have the value of all assets, which on their balance sheet, but the amount that a company like Pearl Abyss pays for CCP in that scenario might be a lot larger than the actual value of the assets. And that difference is Goodwill. So you can see here, they paid $140 million more than the assets. So that was because they believed in, future growth potential, yada, yada, yada. And that is what they now wrote down to 90 million. So essentially, they were expecting a premium of 141 million over the assets that are on the books, and now they are expecting 90 million. And you don't know what strategy they're going, right? There was certainly some leeway here, right? In that 50 million, it's they are forced to reevaluate the value of the company on a regular basis, but you never know. It's not a black or white decision. So you don't know. We don't know whether the 50 million was them saying, well, we're already going to take a huge loss, let's make this big so that we don't have to do it again next year, or whether they try to make it bearable, make a bad situation somehow bearable by not making it 100 million, right? So I don't know, Crota, how you see that, but I certainly think there was some leeway.
Yes, you just have to take your 5-year numbers, convince the auditors that you believe them, and they'll do a sense check. And also bear in mind, the value of of CCP could have fallen last year, but it wouldn't. If it didn't fall below what Pearl Abyss paid for them, then they don't have to recognise a write-off. So
Yeah.
it could have been a 70 million decline at the end of the day, but it's only 50 million that gets below the purchase price. But yes, on one hand, you would want them to be conservative and sort of say, okay, we're going to be really conservative about our numbers going forward. On the other hand, Pearl Abyss has got some explaining to do to its investors, and I don't think they've been incredibly upfront about this, because they've said that the write-off was assets held by Pearl Abyss Capital. Eve is seen as a boring cash generative business by the Korean investors. And actually what we have here is a loss-making business at the moment, and I imagine they just want to get out of that as quick as they can. Get out of the losses, that is, turn it into profits.
Yeah. It's interesting because what happened, like, what do you think was the reason for them to write off the 51 million in 2022? Like, was it the player numbers that were going down? Was it the you could say the failed strategy with the subprice increase? Was it, was it the situation in Ukraine? I mean, it's probably a little bit of everything, but it's it's they didn't take any hit last year, and this year 50 million.
So they reckon Ukraine cost them $800,000, so very small. Which, if the Ukrainian players or Russian players essentially Plex their accounts, you could sort of understand that. I actually think Pearl Abyss took their eye off the ball, because remember last year in May, the announced subscription rise felt like a bit of a panic and in a hurry, because it happened literally a week before FanFest. I think that the Korean management saw the loss, was surprised at the loss last year, and I think they dug a bit deeper and realized, blimey, we could get a loss this year, and I think they've panicked, and I think they've put a lot more focus on really what is going on in CCP and what could the future numbers be. And that's, I think, what's caused them to go, firstly summon the management over last year and get them to put a 30% price rise through, and then sort of be a lot more conservative about what the carrying value of this business is, because the auditors will also have done the same, and they're a third-party organization.
Yeah.
But ultimately, to your answer, it doesn't seem to me that costs are getting out of control. It's just, presumably, it's player numbers. That's the only other variable I can think of that's pulling revenues down, because it's not price.
Well, we did have the whole crypto discussion, right? So the community turning on CCP on crypto, maybe more than they expected. It may have triggered this for the Koreans, because if Hilmar's been telling them for 2 years, hey, we have this plan of implementing blockchain technology into EVE Online, and they were like, yeah, this is amazing, and they all got caught up in the hype around tokens, and then it totally backfired. And then Hilmar was forced to do the whole Not for Tranquility NFT announcement, and then now that culminated into their announcement of putting this into a completely different game and different IP. It's possible that that was Hilmar's strategy for growth for the future, and when that backfired from the point of view of the Korean executives, maybe that's what triggered them to look at the asset and say, we don't believe in this journey anymore.
Yep, that could be it. I mean, they're doing crypto, whether we like it or not. There's a whole page in the notes.
Both of them, right? They're doing like CCP and Pearl Abyss. They're both following crypto.
Yep. I mean, they've actually had a cash inflow because of crypto, and they hold some crypto assets on the balance sheet as well. So it could be, but they are doing crypto, whether we like it or not. I mean, there's a question in the chat that somebody's asking about Goodwill. Some countries don't allow it to be depreciated. That is correct. Most countries don't allow you to depreciate Goodwill, but you have to impair it if you cannot justify its carrying value, and that's what's happening today.
Yeah. The rest of the balance sheet is kind of boring, right? There's nothing that has majorly changed here. There's the deferred revenue is interesting.
Yes, that is forward selling of crypto tokens, which they go into in the notes to the accounts. But essentially, what's going on here is they are developing a crypto platform. They will issue what they call utility tokens. So that's not a currency, but it could be used to get payments. And they forward sold some warrants. So a warrant is an instrument that gives you the right to have a certain asset when that asset becomes available. And so that's 10 million. That's deferred revenue. In other words, it's revenue that will be recognized in the future. There's also 12.5 million cash coming into the business that might be related to that, and I think it is. So, I mean, that is the crypto you start to see in the accounts.
What's interesting also is the retained earnings. The retained earnings would be, the all of the earnings that they have collected since the inception of the company, which was the point in time where Pearl Abyss took over CCP. And so up until last year, they had 1.8 million in retained earnings. So it wasn't loss making, but now it is from an investment point of view, right?
Yeah, exactly. The retained earnings is the aggregate profits and losses since inception, and this business incepted in about, what was it, 2018 or something?
Yeah.
And that 70 million took it into a loss. Yeah, I mean, this is normally this sounds alarm bells when the net assets of your business go down and the retained earnings go down. It's happened this time because of an impairment, which hopefully they will turn the business around in. But
and maybe I'm blind right here, but didn't we last year have the whole I know they have a table later that we're going to look at on that has the in-game currency that has not been used somewhere, but wasn't last year the unused Plex the deferred revenue on the non-current liabilities, or do we have that somewhere else?
It's a deferred revenue on the current liabilities.
Okay. Yeah.
Non-current is anything over a year away, whereas current liabilities, which is at the bottom of that page, is anything that's going to happen in the next.
So it should be here. Oh, it's in here. It's in here, right? And the other other receivables.
Scroll down to current liabilities, which is right.
Ah, there we go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it's within note 16, and actually that number's gone nowhere. So even though they've been selling a lot more Plex, I think what's been happening in the September sale, everybody would have bought the 1 month Plex because it was the cheapest. And
I mean, that's super interesting. Sorry, go ahead, Crota.
And if you notice now, whenever they do a Plex sale, they never discount the 1 month Plex or the 1 month Omega. They always discount the 3 or the 6 or the 12 or the 24 month Omega. So when you now sort of hold your Plex, if you like, you don't really hold it for too much longer.
I mean, this is crazy, right? Because I thought, like, if you had asked me where do deferred revenues go after this year, where they had a huge focus on how do we get people to liquidate their Plex, right? They had these, these 3 Plexageddon sales that were just that made the Plex price, explode several times, and we saw, the Plex being traded double or triple on the daily volume, but the impact was so small, right? They 7 million to 6.6 million. That's not even 10%. That's like 5%, right?
Yeah, and the actual Plex number, when you look at the note, is half that. So it's gone from about 3.5 to 3.5.
Yeah, we have that later. We can look at it.
So it's not moved at all. So I think I don't know what you do if you're Plex, but I sort of in these sales I will essentially convert into Omega because I get a great deal, but then I will top up my Plex holding again because I think myself, like other people, when you've got multiple accounts, you sort of have to think I might be away for 3 months. I better cover myself for 3 months.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Crota, because if people took that Plex and turn it into 24 months Omega, that doesn't move the needle to from deferred to actual revenue, because it only happens when the Omega time is used up. So this will very slowly drop. So then in that way it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that's what they put on sale.
Yes, in September 2022, they put the 1 month Omega on sale as well. And I think they regret that. I think they want you to move the Plex into something longer term so they get more surety of revenue, and also use up the Plex supply in the game.
Yeah. Statement of cash flows, really not going to linger on here, but essentially last year, if you looked at their operating activities, it was basically a wash. So they didn't, cash in equals cash out. This time around, this is where they start with the loss, but then they add in the 51 million because, as I said, that's not a cash out position. That's just a balance sheet issue. So after all, they ended up, after operating activities, with a cash out of 7 million, which is massive if you're looking at 60 million revenue overall. And this doesn't really get any better until you see the 12.5 million you were referring to earlier, Crota. What's your theory there?
So they don't talk about what it is, and it could be one of two things. I mean, one of the guys who is in your Discord forums, he pulled out the CCP accounts, so one of the subsidiaries to this, and he sort of said, look, you can sort of see that they have recognized or de-recognized a subsidiary, and to the tune of 12.5 million. I think that's probably not it. This is genuine cash coming in. I think that's to do with the forward selling of the crypto utility tokens, and that's 12, and so it's linked to that 10 million. I think you can see it in the notes to the accounts of intangible assets. It's a disposal of 12.5 million, but they really don't tell you what it is. But it has rescued their cash flow this year.
I mean, I don't think it rescued it. I think it was because of it. I think they sold this because they were out of cash. Or do you think because it doesn't matter, Pearl Abyss can feed them cash?
Well, it'll be interesting to understand who the buyer was. It could be Pearl Abyss Korea, for all we know. Because if you look further down, a couple of lines below that, there's a capital increase of 3 million. Now that is definitely Pearl Abyss putting £3 million into the business, and it's that 3 million that means that essentially their cash flow for the year was flat.
Yeah.
But those are two. I mean, that 12.5 million is a very odd number, not explained at all. And then just to go from one thing to the other, this utility token, the employees, I think, are given it as part of their incentive packages. So it'd be great if we could sort of corner at FanFest a CCP employee and say, how does your bonus work? Is it cash or utility tokens in the future?
I'm on it. Got it, Crota. Anyway, so that this 12.5 million saved the cash flow and the 3 million injection here. That's presumably from Pearl Abyss, and that's their cash.
Yeah, they have a 50 million loan as well, which was rolled over, as you'd expect. They obviously pay higher interest rates on that because interest rates have gone up. But the really interesting thing is the 50 million loan, you can sort of see in the balance sheet, is provided by a Korean bank. The interest rate they pay is about 5.5%. Now that is not a stupid rate. That is not an interest rate you would charge a business that you were concerned about. Now, obviously, Pearl Abyss itself will be giving guarantees, but it's interesting that the lenders into this business aren't concerned.
Yeah, that's because of Pearl Abyss, right? Because they know Pearl Abyss is good for it. I mean, at this point, I mean, if we theorize a little bit here, because I mean, it's not like we're PricewaterhouseCoopers. I mean, say they would have not been bought by Pearl Abyss, right? They'd be screwed right now.
Yes. Now they may have done a lot of different things had they been bought.
Possibly.
A lot of projects may have been cancelled. But yes, if this was a standalone business, they wouldn't have obviously had the impairment, but they would have made the 8 million loss last year and the 19 million loss this year.
That's massive. That's massive.
they would
That's,
be in
I mean,
trouble.
that is a massive loss on 60 million revenue. You know,
And
so
the game EVE Online is a highly cash generative game. They obviously, like every other business, they have to keep on spending on expansions and stuff like that. And the 17 million general and admin costs, that number is huge. Normally, you'd expect that number to be 5% of revenues, not sort of 20% or whatever it is.
I mean, one thing we don't know, Crota, is how much they're spending on development for the new games, right? If you take out, so if we're looking at that 30 odd million R&D expense, you got to think that at least half of it is going to new games, right? So it's quite possible if they were only running EVE Online that they'd have a profitable company.
That's a good question and an interesting question, because I mean, hats off to CCP. They don't capitalize it anymore. In the old days, if they spent on an expansion that was going to come out next year, none of that money would hit the P&L. It would all go onto the balance sheet and then be amortized out over time. So you see amortization of R&D in the P&L. That's for very old stuff. Now, maybe because they're not capitalizing stuff, it's basically stuff they're spending on the next expansion. So it could all be on EVE Online for all we know, or EVE Echoes. For sure, though, if they want to turn this around and they want to tackle what costs they can, they would have to cancel all new projects that were not self-funded.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's massive. I mean, we know that there's a 4X mobile game based on EVE Online being developed. We know there's an FPS in the EVE Online universe being developed, and now we also know that there's a completely idiotic crypto blockchain based game being developed in the EVE universe as well.
But I think the crypto game is self-funded from with A to Z.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. So that's outside funded. Yes.
And interestingly, the average number of employees increased during the year slightly, but it still increased.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the other tables that we have in here. You can see the depreciation on furniture.
Yeah, that hasn't moved.
Here we go. This one's good. Let me just look at.
If you scroll back up, you get the entire page that talks about their crypto endeavors.
This one right here.
Yes, this page. So if anybody wants to read the report and accounts, I mean, just go to this page. I think it's, what is it, page 19 or something?
Oh yeah, perfect. It's page 20. The group is developing a blockchain-based network and planning to issue crypto tokens on the network upon completion of the development. The token to be issued on the blockchain network by the group is a utility token. I hate this shit. I hate this shit.
Let's be careful. Let's be really careful. Because we are looking at Abyss Iceland, this may be independent of EVE Online. So it may be independent of CCP. But, you know, just sort of, it's all bound into it. So they could stand up and say, this is completely different. It just so happens we're doing it out of Iceland with presumably some of the same employees in the same office, but it's not an EVE Online. So let's not, you know.
But why would they do it in Iceland? If it was Pearl Abyss driven, why would they do it in Iceland?
Because I think the CEO Hilmer has got history in crypto. He's been attending conferences for many years and speaking at conferences on crypto. Not as a currency, more as a sort of a utility and technology, and how it can sort of enhance the experience. And there you have the employee token incentive plan. So get a few people aside, a few beers in Iceland, and work out what's going on.
So Rudolph Montgomery is asking if CCP is 100% owned by Pearl Abyss. That's correct. Yes, 100%.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry for being late. Where do I find this report? Here, you can just go to Crota's blog, and here's a link there. I just posted this in chat. So the group has sold warrants to purchase utility tokens. Because the group has the promise to transfer goods and services in the future, the group intends to recognize revenue when the tokens have been delivered and used.
So that's the 10 million deferred. So that 10 million deferred sits on the balance sheet rather than in the P&L. When they get to the day that the tokens are sold, that 10 million will disappear from the balance sheet and it will become revenue. And there at the bottom, you've got the other crypto assets. They say they hold Ethereum and stuff, not as a trading operation, but more as a they need it. They need to hold it to do business.
Yeah.
Question mark.
The group granted options to purchase the tokens to the current. So the tokens. So these tokens right here are the ones used for the employee token incentive plan, though. Groda.
I think these utility tokens will be what will be on their blockchain, and I think what's going on here is ahead of that blockchain being completed, and therefore ahead of the tokens being issued. And it's a utility token, so it's not necessarily a currency. They are issuing options to employees. So you're a CCP employee, as part of your bonus package or your remuneration, you've been given some options which give you the right to receive these tokens when they become available, and then you do whatever. If I sort of sat in a darkened room and wondered what is going on here, a utility token is in effect, it's sort of a contract. You can be used to sort of be a contract.
I mean, it might be an NFT. Wouldn't that be an NFT?
Could be. It could be. Or it could start to give employees a share of the revenues of EVE Online. I mean, that's one way to hold on to your employees if you're having a bit of a struggle. You sort of say, okay, if you hang around, work with us, we will give you a share of the revenues coming from EVE Online.
But there's easier, like you wouldn't need crypto to do that, though.
Like, no, but if you're developing a crypto blockchain, it's a useful way of stringing it all in. And this is me guessing with a 3% chance of being right here, but.
So there is an employee token incentive plan. So that's something we'll find out at FanFest. When employees exercise the option to pay the exercise price, employees are given tokens. On the other hand, employees in Chinese office are given cash bonus equivalent to their fair value. So in China, this is not working.
Or not allowed. Yeah, one of the
two. Yeah. Okay, and then here we have the other crypto assets that CCP is holding. The group holds other crypto assets such as Ethereum for various business purposes. The group does not hold other crypto assets for sale in the normal course of business, but holds them for various business purposes. Because the crypto assets held by the group are identifiable non-monetary assets that have no physical substance and are controlled by the group, the crypto assets are recognized as other tangible assets. And that's what we saw on the balance sheet.
Yeah, so when you go to the intangible asset note, there's about 107 million of other intangibles. Now that is not crypto assets. That is completely sort of different things. Yeah, Lord, I have no idea how much of that is sort of Ethereum and stuff. Probably a very small, very, very small amount.
So this is a look at the revenue more in depth. So we see that that drop in revenue from subscriptions and in-game sales, so Omega and Plex, and then we have royalties and licenses that have gone down also, and that is China and EVE Echoes, right? It's both.
I don't know about the EVE Echoes.
I think EVE Echoes is run by NetEase completely, isn't it?
Okay, if it's run by NetEase, and it will be. I
think so.
EVE Echoes as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
The actual accounts for CCP in Iceland, although it's only one company, as one of your sort of writers on your Discord said, it gives you a lot more detail about what's going on in this line. But I think we've got enough here.
Okay. And then this is what I meant earlier. This is basically across the board. It's dropping. There's not one region where it's massively dropping. Obviously, Europe is being hit the most, but that probably encompasses Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, that Russia-Ukraine cost about $800,000, but yes.
And then salaries have gone up, but only slightly, and the headcount has gone down. Yeah.
I know. I think the average
headcount has gone up. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, gone up by 10%. So, I can't work out what's going on there, to be honest. Unless they got bonuses in 2021 that didn't repeat in 2022.
W Running is saying like ISK is not an intangible asset because it doesn't have any value for it has a value for you as a player, but not for CCP as a company. You can't do anything with ISK in the real world.
Plex and Omega, I think, are the only things that have value.
You can see their interest expense went up 1.8 million to 2.4 million. So that's higher interest rates overall, and or more debt.
Higher interest rates overall.
Yeah. Government grants, they're getting around 10% of their revenue.
Yeah, that's pretty stable. I assume they come from Iceland or somewhere. A lot of governments, Canada as well, give great grants for games developers.
And then income tax, I don't really care about. I think.
It's all non-cash. You're making a loss, so you get some income, but it's all non-cash.
I wanted to look at the.
Right, here we are. The intangible you just scrolled past has that 12.5. Note 10.
Where was it?
Keep on scrolling up. Up a bit further. There we are. So other intangible assets, 107 million they started off with. They added 12.7 million. Not sure what that is, and they disposed of 12.5 million. That 12.5 million is obviously the cash. For all I know, the additions and the disposal could all be related, but it's not clear.
I mean, if they are creating these tokens, and these are intangible assets, then maybe they created them and disposed of them.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. And therefore, the other side of that 12.5 million cash in, because you've got to recognize the 12.5 million cash coming in somehow. And I think 10 million of it was stuck as a deferred revenue.
Yeah. Tessadrin is asking, how much did PA buy CCP for again? Do you know that number by heart, Croda? I can look it up.
Something tells me it's about 190 million with optionality to get to 400 million, which obviously
I would have said around 200 million, yeah. So, their Goodwill was 140 million, right? So their assets were around 60 then.
Exactly. So you have, when you buy somebody, as you said, you value the assets you're buying, you then put a value on the customer relationships and other stuff, and the rest is Goodwill.
Yeah. Here you have the impairment right here.
Yes, so exactly. That's the Goodwill being impaired. So they've got about 80 million more Goodwill to impair if they need to.
I wanted to look at the receivables. We have so trade receivables. This is like probably subscription money that they haven't collected yet, right? Might be.
We all pay in advance, so maybe that's the NetEase amount. Maybe the deal with NetEase is they pay every 6 months or something. I can't think what else that would be, because we pay in advance. That's right. Is it affiliates or something? Not sure.
I don't know. I was looking for the deferred revenue. Do you know what page is it on?
No, you're almost there though. Keep on going. There we are. Scroll up. Scroll to the top of page 30. No. Down. Note 16.
There we go. Yeah. In chat, CCP Games has agreed to be acquired by South Korean-based game studio for 425 million. Yeah, I don't think they ended up paying 425 million Sergorak, but that's that sounds like the right number. But I think they didn't end up pay all of that, because some of that was contingent upon CCP hitting certain performance targets, and they didn't. But we can look it up. So this is the number that I was looking for. So we're looking at deferred revenue. And in terms of subscriptions, this just means that it's slightly up from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Might have been on top of that, Sergorak. I can look it up. So they are now waiting. So more. Even though the overall revenue from subscriptions went down, there's more people with longer term subscriptions now. And that's no surprise, because that was a strategy all along.
Well, I mean, if the number of people, I mean, what this is essentially saying there's X number of months at the end of December that people still had, subscription to play out.
Exactly.
So, but you've got to remember the subscription that's got to play out at the end of this year was worth 30% more to CCP than it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it is flat suggests that
fewer
it is
players.
less players. Yeah.
Or
the same number of players, but for a shorter time. They haven't bought 6 months, they bought 3 months.
No, I think it's a lot fewer players for a longer time.
Yeah.
Because I think it's both. And this is the in-game purchases not yet consumed. So this is the Plex of their books. So this is actually 10%. So this is a bit more than the total number, but not as much as I would have thought.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is them trying to use up all the Plex in the game, and also just less players.
I'm where are the non-current liabilities? Are they up there?
You pass them. Go straight back up to where you were, where we were before with the Plex. So it's note 16. There we are. Third line, token warrants, 10 million.
But what about subscriptions that are out more than a year, Crota? Shouldn't they be non-current?
Yes, they should. So
they group them together here, huh? Yeah.
They could do, or there's literally no one buys more than 12 months.
No, there's a lot of people that have more than 12 months. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people took advantage of the 24-month sale that they had going on. I know people that did. So it's there, but this deferred revenue is current and non-current.
They would have to have taken advantage of it before the end of 2022. If they've done it in, say, the January or February or March sale this year, then we won't see that in non-current until next year.
There's some risk management here. Is there a number for CCP's expense funding ex-CSM members? Like support with Omega Plex?
Never seen it. You see how much they pay the directors, which is about 760,000. And then there's a really funny line at the bottom saying a CEO 500,000.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm not sure what that's all about.
This number right here, you mean?
I have no idea what that means. Is that a CEO has paid Pearl Abyss 500,000, or is that Pearl Abyss has paid a CEO 500,000? Which CEO is it? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? That's some mystery. 500,000. How are the skill extractors you buy from CCP noted on here? And does CCP inject Plex themselves into the economy? No, they do not inject Plex, but the skill extractors, they are grouped the same. I was calling it Plex, but it's Plex and skill extractors. Skill extractors are handled the same way that Plex is. Let me actually restart the raffle. We're missing a raffle, aren't we? This is the ownership. Auditor fees. So
yeah, nothing odd going on there. If there was something odd, you'd see the other services line fly. So, you know, if CCP was up for sale or something, you'd see the auditors do a lot more work. But
yeah,
not really. So perhaps not.
and then we have the whole thing in Icelandic. So I don't know about that. All right.
So they've got to turn it around.
They have got to turn it around. This is this was some pretty crazy shocking numbers. If I'm honest, it's like I could have imagined that Pearl Abyss is not that happy with their investment, but you know, and if you look at the quarterly earnings reports from Pearl Abyss, the investor reports, you know, then obviously those are always positive because they're for investors, but they've been hiding it fairly well. And as you said, they said nothing about the 50 million write-off there. So
Yeah, if you're an investor in Pearl Abyss, so you're probably Asian, or maybe you're European and you want to invest in Asian games, you see EVE Online as a very boring, low growth or low decline cash generative operation. And in that sense, it's quite high quality. So yes, they have to get this back to profit before it dawns on everybody what's going on.
yeah, there's some questions in chat here. Aren't skill extractors just a profit for them immediately since they do not delay any income?
The rules here is if you as a player have the right to sort of create an asset for yourself in the future, then they have to delay the recognition of that revenue. So actually, skill instructors, that the questionnaire might be correct. It just could be instant.
But they do create large skill injectors. But yeah, possibly. I don't know the answer, Remy Main. You could be right. If you would make a quick summary, if we're gonna be good or we're gonna go down. So the summary of the Pearl Abyss financials is that Pearl Abyss have had to write off 50 million of the value of what they paid for CCP 5 years ago on what you call goodwill on the balance sheet, which indicates that in this past year the fair value of what they see in the assets and growth potential of CCP Iceland or CCP Games is lower than expected, much lower. Now, part of that is because of rising interest rates, but part of that is also because of the growth expectations of EVE Online, and so you know, it's not like CCP can go down because Pearl Abyss is much larger and they can fund this as long as they want. It's more a question of you know, they wouldn't turn off EVE Online because that's actually on some days making them money, right? The reason that they're not making money is because they're investing heavily in new IP, and not all of that is funded through investments like the crypto game they're working on.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, do the simple back of the envelope arithmetic. The subs went up by 30% in May. Let's call that end of June to make it easier. Overall revenues were down 12%. That suggests to me that player numbers on average fell by 25%. Now, it could have fallen by more, and it could have begun to rise by the end of the year, which I think is what is happening. Reading Noisy Gamer's blog, he sort of suggests that player numbers have been recovering for a while. But I mean, this is bang on what you were saying back in August. You put the price up and your volumes are going to go down. So my summary would be player numbers down, costs well controlled, loss increase. And I think the positives are they've actually now got somebody in marketing who knows what they're doing, as far as I can tell. The way all the Plex and the Omega sales are going, and the player numbers do actually seem to be recovering. So I mean, I love this game. I want it to stay around, and I'm a bit more hopeful than I would have been otherwise.
Let me see here. But the premium currency has been paid when you bought the extractor. Yes, Mary. So you might be right. When they got Eve had potential. Was it there or CCP's fault that the potential was misused? Oh, I mean, in the end, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it depends on how. I imagine Pearl Abyss didn't get too involved of what CCP was doing because they bought it as a cash bringing business, and it's nobody's trying to lose money. CCP did their best. They had a few bad years, financially speaking, but that might be. Who knows how open and transparent they are with each other. So it might not be one fault or the other. It might be either, there's Pearl Abyss is letting this happen because they have faith in Hilmar and his crew, or they have been unhappy for a while and have been communicating that, but we will never find out. So it's not really anyone's fault. Nobody's purposely doing something wrong, and in the end, Pearl Abyss paid whatever they wanted to pay for CCP, whatever they saw in them, and if that didn't pan out, that's 100% on them, because that's what investment means. You sometimes make an acquisition with an idea of materializing that potential, not just buying and waiting for income. Sure, absolutely. Plex can't be recognized right away because they create an obligation on CCP to provide a future to earn that subscription income. You could argue that's the same with skill extractors. Yeah, right. Maybe player numbers are rising, which is great, but income per player subscription might be lower as the offers are very generous these days. Yeah, but we also have higher subscription prices. So, also it's not like player numbers are like greatly recovering, right? It's, if anything, numbers are going up very slowly and really as a result of the last expansion. So it's still out. The jury's still out. Somebody asked earlier, how is Pearl Abyss doing? And we've discussed these, and we're going to see the new quarterly numbers from Pearl Abyss next week or so, I think. But
11th of May.
Yeah, that's next. Yeah, it's very soon, huh? So these are the last numbers that Pearl Abyss published, and for them, 2022 was rather flat compared to 2021, and operating revenue was rising. Net profit was way down, but this was if I remember correctly, Crota, this was a financial, this was a financial loss, not an operating loss.
Yeah, that's right. They took a 79 billion won, which is about a $60 million hit on what they call Pearl Abyss capital in assets. And when we all looked through it, we could not see that had anything to do with EVE Online, and they certainly didn't mention that.
But what if it is the 50 million?
I think it is. I would be staggered if somewhere in that 60 million wasn't the EVE Online 50 million.
Yeah. So it's quite possible that this loss right here they took in Q4 was exactly that. Now that I look at it, I forgot that was there.
Unless they'd quietly taken a loss in prior years and we're now only recognizing it further down the subsidiary structure, but I don't think so. And also bear in mind the accounts we're looking at today are 31st of December accounts. So Pearl Abyss cannot sort of turn around in May and go, we've got another loss.
In terms of revenue by IP, this looked quite bad, the 19.4 to 17.6, but I remember this was very much currency related. I mean, the dollar has been losing a lot of value towards other currencies.
Yes, we spend a lot of time, don't we, trying to work out the US dollar to won convert.
I think it was rather flat in terms of it was flat in dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think we got to about 5% down, but also quarter on quarter is a tough one. You really need to compare Q4 2022 to Q4 2021 because of all the holiday effects and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the story with the Pearl Abyss numbers. Any other questions before we let Crota go here? Thanks for coming, by the way, Crota. It's been a lot of fun. We should do this every year, but we can also do this next week for the Pearl Abyss numbers if you want.
Yeah, let's see if they come up with anything of interest.
Yeah, this is mostly quick because it's like 3 numbers on EVE Online.
Well, you never know. Somebody might ask about EVE Online.
Now, yeah. I might try to get into the call. You can sign up for it, huh? They won't ask me. They won't let me ask a question unless you're from like an investment bank.
It might be in Korean as well.
Yeah, they always do Korean and then they translate it. Like it's, but I'm pretty sure you can ask questions in English. Tiramisu is asking, do I invest in this or not? Can I? You can. You absolutely can buy Pearl Abyss stock if you want. It's not doing that well. Spoiler alert. I haven't looked at this.
All gaming stocks have struggled because they benefited so well during the pandemic and lockdown, and they didn't really hold on to the gains they made overall.
Yeah. All right. Well, Crota, any last minute words?
No, I mean, like I said, I love this game. I want them to turn it around. I think it will be interesting to see how they do it. It is a huge cash generative game. I mean, you look at the cash that flies off these things and you think, well, blimey, it's just how much do they need to spend to keep it going, and are they spending stuff on other projects they can drop?
Yeah. And how far are these games away from being released? It sounds like all the games that they're working on are very far from being released. So this is the question of how long is Pearl Abyss going to fund them developing it. But it's hard to imagine that this is not a decision that has already been made. If they've been funding it until now, then they're going to at least stick around until some of these games make it to live, right? And to see how they're going. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a point in investing into these games.
Yes, I agree. I think the management in Korea have now sort of got a laser focus on CCP in Iceland that they didn't have 2 years ago.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Crota, feel free to stick around, but we'll move on to other things now. So see you next week.
Yep. See you next week. I'll just go and see the children, but
Yeah,
I'll stick around and chat.